So one of the things that has been common of the lessons of obedience that we've talked about so far is Abraham and Isaac. And it's like, I don't know what he's got in mind, but I trust that God's got things he's going to do, so it's all fine. And so he takes his son out, and it all turns out fine. You got Joshua around Jericho, and he's like, listen, I just kind of want you guys to walk around the building and, blow the horns and trumpets. And then at some point, I'm going to tell you to do it 7 times. Then you're going to blow the trumpets really loud, and the walls are going to come down, and you can take over the city. And in both these cases, the men were like, okay, sounds like a plan, right? How often do we, though, overthink a plan that is given to us and go, no, that's not going to work, right? Well, there's this development of faith, I'll call it, okay? Being someone who did not grow up in the church, I kind of went through this, where for a while you'll think, oh, well, there is nothing, right? And then you think, well, it's kind of absurd to think that there is nothing for us to have purpose here and that this is all some sort of random accident, right? I'm really big into statistical analysis. I know it seems kind of odd and contrary, but you look at the statistics of things and it's like there's no way we could be where we are. It's some sort of random happenstance. And then it feels like, oh yeah, this random happenstance happens all the time. No. Mathematically, it isn't possible. Biologically, it isn't possible. Physically, it is impossible. There has to be something that guides us, right? So we go through this concept of I don't believe anything to I believe something, but I really don't know what I believe, right? And then you kind of come across this concept and you learn about Jesus and you're like, okay, maybe, but then you're kind of like, it develops a little bit because you're kind of like, maybe Jesus presents himself to other people as different people, right? Maybe he appeared to the Muslims as Muhammad and appeared to the Buddhist as Buddha and things like that. But when you really get into it, you learn that's not the way it is. So then it starts to confront the things that you're comfortable with, right? Right? It's like, because you want to believe that everybody's all fine. It's all, yay, it's all happy, good. But the reality of it is that there is only one God. He died for our sins. And it was very intentional and purposeful. And because of that, we need to have a faith that follows through with that because he's done so much for us, we have to do at least a little bit for him. Am I right? So our faith kind of develops this way. And then we're like, okay, I believe this, but I want to check it out. It's like the Ronald Reagan's famous thing, trust but verify, right? So as your faith develops, you get to this thing where you're like, yeah, I believe that's true, but I want to evaluate it. And that's kind of where I was when it came to creation, right? And so I started looking at the science and I started looking at the statistics. And that was my trust but verify moment and found out that the whole concept of just spontaneous eruption of life just doesn't follow any sense of rationality. Let's see, my favorite way of putting this. There was nothing and then something happened to nothing that made nothing explode and create everything. That's totally logical, right? That follows physics to a T. No, it doesn't. Not at all. So we go through this process of learning, and then we get to this point in our faith journey where it's like, God leads me to do this. I may not understand it. You get kind of uncomfortable and kind of queasy with it, but you're like, okay, Lord, I'm going to step out, right? And you kind of like, okay. And then when you get out there and you go, I didn't die. It's all good, right? And that leads you to this point where I call it blind faith. And blind faith has such a negative concept to it. But the reality of it is it has a very purposeful concept for us as Christians. Because there are times when we don't know what God's up to, but he has a plan.